Ancient Egyptian makeup was far more than simple decoration. It was a complex fusion of science, spirituality, and social status that defined one of history's most iconic looks. By the end of this journey, you will know the secret ingredients that gave their cosmetics such power and purpose. We will uncover why they used toxic lead near their eyes and what mysterious blue stone was more precious than gold. What do you believe is the true purpose of beauty? The most iconic symbol of ancient Egypt stares back at us from tomb paintings and sarcophagi, a look defined by one powerful substance. Kohl was far more than mere eyeliner. Its creation was a precise alchemy, beginning with minerals painstakingly gathered from the earth. The primary ingredient for a classic black coal was galena, a silvery lead sulfide ore that was crushed into an ultra-fine, shimmering powder. For a striking green hue, they turned to malachite, a copper-based mineral ground with equal care. These powders were not used dry. They were meticulously blended with oils or animal fats, a process that transformed them into a smooth paste that could be stored in ornate jars and easily applied with a small stick. This was the birth of the legendary almond eye, a look that extended beyond the lid in dramatic, sweeping lines. Why did this specific shape become so timeless? It elongated the eye, creating an aura of divine serenity and all-knowing calm that mirrored the gods themselves. The effect was hypnotic, a bold statement of beauty that continues to captivate us thousands of years later. Yet this striking appearance concealed a deeply unsettling secret, one that lay hidden within its most celebrated ingredient. But that shimmering galena paste held a secret purpose far beyond beauty. The ancient Egyptians believed coal was a powerful shield. They watched as the relentless desert sun glared off the sand, and they developed a practical theory. The dark coal around the eyes would cut the sun's harsh glare, much like the black streaks a modern athlete might wear on a sunny day. But their thinking went much deeper than simple light absorption. They lived in a world where sickness was often seen as an invasion by malevolent spirits or the dreaded evil eye. By lining their eyes so dramatically, they were creating a spiritual barrier, a bold declaration that warded off these invisible threats. The most fascinating part, however, is what modern science has discovered. Some researchers have found that the very lead salts in coal, the ingredient we now know is toxic, can actually trigger a low-level antibacterial response in the tear fluid. This does not make it safe for use today, but it suggests the ancients may have stumbled upon a real, if dangerous, medical benefit. Their makeup was a pharmacy, a spiritual amulet, and a fashion statement all blended into one. How did they discover such a potent combination of function and form? The answer lies not just in the coal itself, but in the other treasures they ground into their cosmetic palettes. While coal guarded the eyes, another color painted a story of life itself across the upper lids. Green makeup, crafted from the vibrant mineral malachite, offered a different kind of power. This was not the dark, protective shield of coal, but a brilliant celebration of growth and renewal. To obtain this precious pigment, expeditions journeyed to the remote mines of the Sinai Peninsula. There, they wrested the raw, banded green stone from the earth, a difficult and dangerous task that revealed its immense value. Artisans then ground the malachite into a fine, radiant powder on stone pallets, a process that released its lush, earthy color. This green pigment was typically applied to the upper eyelid, creating a stunning contrast with the dark kohl that outlined the eyes. The effect was visually striking, but its true meaning ran far deeper than simple aesthetics. The color green was intrinsically linked to the lush vegetation that sprang to life after the Nile's annual flood, a symbol of life triumphing over the arid desert. This powerful association connected the wearer directly to the god Osiris, the lord of the underworld, and the ultimate symbol of resurrection and fertility. Wearing malachite was not just a fashion choice, it was an act of divine alignment, a way to channel the eternal cycle of death and rebirth onto one's own face. How could a simple mineral hold such profound meaning? The answer pushes us to look beyond the makeup itself, to the very containers that held these sacred substances. Just as malachite channeled the power of rebirth, another color spoke to the very essence of existence. The flush of red on lips and cheeks was not achieved with berries or dyes, but with the earth itself. Red ochre, a rich iron oxide pigment, was the ancient Egyptians' cosmetic of choice for imparting a vibrant, healthy glow. This material was remarkably abundant, easily gathered from the sun-baked soil along the Nile River. The preparation was beautifully straightforward. A small amount of the colored clay would be mixed with a little water or animal fat, transforming it into a smooth, workable paste that could be applied with a fingertip. But why was this particular shade of red so significant? In a culture where life was a constant negotiation with the harsh desert, the color red was the visual signature of vitality. It was the hue of blood, the very force of life coursing through the body. It mirrored the radiant energy of the sun god Ra at his most powerful zenith. To stain one's lips and cheeks with red ochre was to perform a small, daily ritual of affirmation. It was a declaration of robust health, of passion, and of one's own vibrant life force. This simple earth pigment, drawn from the banks of their life-giving river, allowed every individual to wear the color of life itself. Beyond the bold colors of the face, ancient Egyptians extended their artistry to the very tips of their fingers and the strands of their hair. For this, they turned to a different kind of natural treasure, the henna plant. They would harvest the small leaves of the Lawsonia shrub, drying and then crushing them into a fine, fragrant powder. This powder was the key to a versatile cosmetic. Mixed with liquids like water or lemon juice, it transformed into a thick, mud-like paste. This paste was then carefully applied in intricate patterns on the hands and feet, staining the skin with a temporary reddish-brown design. The stains deepened over hours, leaving behind beautiful, ornamental patterns that could last for weeks. But henna was far more than simple body art. For royalty and the elite, it was a mark of status and celebration. Its use documented in scenes of feasts and sacred ceremonies. It adorned the nails of queens, coloring them a rich, earthy tone long before the invention of modern polish. It was also used to color and condition hair, offering a natural way to cover grays or create a richer, darker shade. This practice connected personal adornment to the cycles of nature itself, using the power of a simple plant to celebrate life's most important moments. What other surprising secrets did their cosmetic jars hold? One final ingredient was so rare and so difficult to produce that it truly separated the divine pharaoh from the common person. These vibrant powders needed a medium to bring them to life, a substance that could transform dry mineral dust into a smooth, wearable cream. The secret was found in the rich, unctuous bases they meticulously prepared. Animal fats, like rendered goose fat, provided a thick, emollient foundation that helped the pigment cling to the skin for hours. More commonly, they turned to the bounty of their environment, pressing nuts and seeds to extract precious plant oils. Castor oil, moringa oil, and the oil from the balanos tree each offered unique properties. These oils were more than just simple binders. In the relentless dryness of the Egyptian climate, they delivered deep moisturization, protecting the skin from the harsh, desiccating winds. But their role was even more sophisticated. Imagine the process of applying your makeup and being greeted not by a waxy smell, but by a delicate, pleasant fragrance. Many of these plant oils were naturally aromatic, so with every stroke of the Kohl stick or dab of colored paste, the wearer was also anointing themselves with a subtle, personal perfume. This fusion of color, skincare, and scent reveals a beauty philosophy that was deeply holistic. Their cosmetics were not a mask to be worn, but a nourishing, sensory experience that integrated seamlessly into daily life, protecting the body while pleasing the senses. How did they manage to preserve these intricate creations, keeping them fresh and ready for use day after day? Yet the most breathtaking color in their palette was not drawn from the local earth, but from a stone that fell from the heavens. Lapis lazuli, with its deep celestial blue flecked with golden pyrite like tiny stars, was the ultimate luxury. This was not a mineral found along the Nile. Acquiring it required epic trade caravans traveling thousands of miles to the remote mountains of modern-day Afghanistan, a treacherous journey that made it more valuable than gold itself. The stone was so hard that artisans had to grind it for hours, even days, to produce a tiny amount of the most intense blue powder imaginable. This was not a color for the common people. It was reserved for pharaohs and the gods, used to paint the eyes of statues and to create the most elaborate divine makeup for the ruling elite. They believed its color was a direct piece of the night sky, a physical fragment of the heavens that could connect the wearer to the gods. A slightly more accessible, but still precious, blue came from azurite, a copper mineral that offered a brighter, almost sky blue hue. Whether from lapis or azurite, this blue pigment was used to create stunning, elaborate eye designs that reached all the way to the eyebrows. To wear this color was to publicly declare your divine right to rule, to literally wrap your face in the fabric of the cosmos. It was the final, definitive proof that in ancient Egypt, makeup was never just about looking beautiful. It was about becoming a living symbol of power, faith, and the universe itself. The tools that created these legendary looks were works of art in themselves. Long before they became practical items, the earliest cosmetic palettes were grand ceremonial slabs of polished slate, carved into the shapes of animals like hippos and turtles. These were not simple mixing trays, they were powerful ritual objects. Over centuries, their form evolved, shrinking from these monumental pieces into smaller, more personal items that could be held in one's hand. The typical palette was a flat, rectangular stone, often made of greywacke or siltstone, with a smooth, slightly concave surface. At one or both ends, you would find circular depressions, shallow wells designed to hold the precious pigments. This is where the transformation happened. A small piece of raw mineral, perhaps a chunk of deep green malachite or a shiny fragment of galena, would be placed on the flat grinding area. Then, using a smaller, hand-held stone grinder, the user would press down and move it in a circular motion, crushing the ore with patient, deliberate strokes. The rhythmic scraping of stone on stone was the sound of creation, slowly reducing a hard rock into a soft, shimmering powder. This was not a hurried process. It was a meditative act, a daily ritual of preparation that connected the user to the very earth that provided their beauty. The resulting fine powder would then be carefully swept into one of the palette's circular depressions. Here, the final magic occurred. A few drops of oil or a dab of fresh animal fat would be added, and the mixture would be worked with a fingertip or a small stick until it reached the perfect, creamy consistency. Some artisans even used empty mussel shells as tiny, natural containers for mixing their most prized colors. Every step, from the first grind to the final blend, was performed with a remarkable precision that reveals a deep understanding of texture and chemistry. This was not a crude preparation, it was a refined art form. The cosmetic palette was, in essence, a portable laboratory and an artist studio, all contained within a single, elegant stone slab. The silent danger in their cosmetic jars was not always a mineral shield, but sometimes a slow poison. Alongside the protective Kohl, ancient Egyptians used another lead-based substance with a far more troubling purpose. They ground a soft, white mineral called cerussite, a form of lead carbonate, into the finest powder. This white paste became the foundation for a coveted look, a lighter skin tone that was brushed across the face and body. In a society where most laborers worked long hours under the relentless sun, pale skin was an immediate and unmistakable status symbol. It signified a life of privilege, spent in the shaded halls of a grand home or a palace, free from manual toil. To achieve this look was to publicly display one's elite position. Yet this pursuit of beauty came with a horrifying, hidden cost that they could never have understood. We now know that lead is a potent neurotoxin. Absorbed through the skin over years, it can cause devastating health problems, from organ failure and severe anemia to neurological damage and even infertility. How could a culture so advanced in so many ways willingly rub a known poison onto their skin? The answer lies in the complete separation of cause and effect. The symptoms of chronic lead poisoning, like fatigue, pain, and cognitive decline, would have appeared slowly and unpredictably. They would have been blamed on curses, bad spirits, or simple illness, never connected to the elegant wide pace that signified their high status. This creates a haunting paradox. Their drive to display health and wealth through a light complexion may have inadvertently been undermining their very well-being. This dangerous preference reveals a beauty standard with a dark shadow, one that would echo through the centuries long after the last pharaoh was laid to rest. For the vast majority of Egyptians, the legendary lapis lazuli and shimmering galena were as distant as the stars. Their reality was one of earth and ash. When the treasured minerals were beyond reach, they turned to the humblest ingredients, crafting their own versions of beauty from the ground beneath their feet. Simple clays found in riverbeds and along the desert's edge became the foundation of their daily routine. A common dark clay could be mixed with a little water to create a serviceable paste for lining the eyes, a far cry from the silky kohl of the elite, but still capable of producing that familiar, defining shape. They also used ash, the fine, gray residue from their cooking fires. By carefully collecting and sifting this ash, then blending it with a drop of oil, they created a smoky, gray-black pigment that could darken the lids and lashes. These were not the radiant cosmetics of the tomb paintings, but they were accessible, practical, and deeply rooted in the rhythms of everyday life. Why would someone go to the trouble of using simple ash? The impulse for adornment and protection was universal, not reserved for the wealthy. Applying these mixtures still offered a sense of ritual, a moment of personal care before a long day of labor in the fields or along the Nile. Even in its simplest form, this makeup provided a psychological barrier against the harsh elements and the ever-present belief in malevolent forces. The common Egyptian, using clay and ash, was participating in the same cultural tradition as the pharaoh, just with a different palette. Their versions may have been simpler, but the intention was identical: to protect the body, honor the gods, and find a moment of beauty in a demanding world. This reveals that the true power of Egyptian cosmetics was not locked away in rare minerals, but lived in the unwavering human desire for identity and grace, no matter one's station in life. The most exclusive parties in ancient Egypt introduced a cosmetic you could not simply apply, but had to wear like a crown. Guests would arrive with a fragrant, solid cone of perfumed animal fat perched carefully atop their elaborate wigs. This was not a decorative accessory in the way we think of a hairpiece. It was a slow-release sensory experience. As the evening progressed in the warm, crowded halls, the heat from dozens of bodies and flickering oil lamps would begin its work. The solid cone would soften, then slowly melt. Rivulets of rich, scented fat would drip down through the complex braids and curls of the wig, anointing the wearer's head, neck, and shoulders with a continuous wave of fragrance. Imagine the scent of precious myrrh, with its deep, resinous warmth, or the sweet, spicy aroma of cinnamon, a luxury imported from distant lands, gradually filling the air around a guest. This was a deliberate and public display of immense wealth. The very ingredients in the cone, myrrh, cinnamon, and frankincense, were among the most expensive trade goods in the ancient world. To literally burn through such treasures on your own head for a single evening's entertainment was the ultimate demonstration that you lived a life far removed from everyday toil. The glistening, melting fat was a visible performance of consumption, a statement that you could afford to use the kingdom's finest perfumes not from a tiny vial, but by the handful. Why go to such an extravagant length? Because in a culture that linked scent so closely with divinity and cleanliness, to be enveloped in your own personal cloud of the most expensive aromas was to become a walking altar, a living symbol of purity, privilege, and divine favor that no one in the room could possibly ignore. That dramatic almond eye did more than command respect from the gods. It also served as brilliant protection from the relentless Egyptian sun. For the countless farmers, builders, and laborers who spent their days outdoors, the thick bands of kohl around their eyes were a practical necessity. Think of the harsh glare reflecting off the pale desert sand and the shimmering surface of the Nile. A constant assault on the eyes that could lead to pain, fatigue, and even temporary blindness. The dark, matte pigments of Kohl acted like a natural sunblock for the delicate skin around the eyes, absorbing that intense light instead of letting it bounce back into the wearer's vision. This drastically cut down on glare, improving visual clarity and comfort in an overwhelmingly bright environment. Modern studies have even explored whether these ancient mineral mixtures provided a degree of ultraviolet radiation protection. While the exact level of UV blocking is still debated, the physical barrier of the paste itself undoubtedly offered some shielding. This turns the iconic Egyptian eye makeup into one of history's earliest and most effective pairs of sunglasses. It was a perfect fusion of form and function, where a spiritual shield against evil spirits doubled as a very real, physical shield against the elements. This dual purpose reveals that their beauty standards were not born from vanity alone, but from a profound and practical understanding of their own world. The very jars that held these precious cosmetics were objects of reverence in their own right. They began as humble clay vessels, simple pots designed for utility in the daily lives of common people. But as the rituals of beauty became more sacred, so too did their containers. For those who could afford it, the simple clay jar was replaced by exquisite vessels carved from smooth, translucent alabaster. When you held one of these containers, the light would pass through the stone, making the rich green malachite or deep black coal inside glow with an inner life. This was more than just pretty packaging. It was a way to display the value of the substance within, transforming a functional item into a treasure. The most iconic cosmetic jar was the elegant Kohl tube, a slim container often crafted from wood, glass, or even precious metals like silver and gold. These tubes were frequently paired with a small, slender applicator stick, sometimes stored neatly inside the tube itself, a design of timeless efficiency. For the elite, the material of choice was often Egyptian faience, a brilliant ceramic that shimmered with a unique turquoise or blue-green glaze. This was not mere pottery, it was a manufactured gemstone, its radiant color symbolizing life and rebirth. The effort invested in these containers tells us everything. A pharaoh would not store a divine fragment of the night sky, lapis lazuli, in a common clay pot. The vessel had to be worthy of the substance it protected. This is why so many of these beautiful jars were discovered not in the ruins of homes, but sealed within tombs, placed carefully beside the deceased. They were essential provisions for the journey into the afterlife, ensuring the individual could arrive in the divine realm looking their most powerful and protected. The cosmetic jar was a promise of eternal beauty, a final, elegant necessity for an eternity to come. That potent kohl lining the eye was more than a mortal fashion. It was a direct imitation of the gods. Look at any depiction of the falcon-headed Horus, and you will see his eye outlined with the same dramatic precision a pharaoh would strive to achieve. This was no coincidence. The eye of Horus was one of the most powerful symbols in their entire pantheon, representing healing, protection, and the restored order of the universe. By painting this sacred shape onto their own faces, Egyptians were not just decorating themselves, they were invoking a divine power, turning their own eyes into a living, protective amulet. They believed that through this ritual, the gods' own strength would flow into them, guarding against illness and malevolent magic with every single application. This connection went even deeper with the goddess Hathor, the divine embodiment of beauty, joy, and love. She was often called the Lady of the West, a welcoming presence in the afterlife, and her worship was filled with music, dance, and celebration. Adorning oneself with makeup was an act of devotion to her. To enhance one's beauty was to honor her, to participate in the cosmic joy she represented. The green malachite echoing the lush Nile, the red ochre mirroring the life-giving blood, even the celestial blue of lapis lazuli. These were not just pretty colors. They were the physical expressions of divine attributes. When a priest applied the formal makeup for a temple ceremony, or when a wealthy woman carefully lined her eyes at her vanity, they were performing a small, daily ritual of connection. They were using their own bodies as a canvas to reflect the perfection of the gods. This transforms the entire concept of their beauty routine from a simple act of vanity into a profound spiritual practice. Every stroke of the Kohl stick was a prayer, every dusting of green powder a hymn. The face became a sacred text, written in the language of minerals and oils, telling a story of faith that was worn for all the world, and the gods to see. This sacred ritual of adornment was not reserved for women alone. If you were to walk through an ancient Egyptian market, you would see men of all classes wearing the same iconic makeup. From the mighty pharaoh depicted on a temple wall to the farmer tending his fields along the Nile, the application of kohl and ochre was a universal practice. Historical evidence, from tomb artifacts to detailed reliefs, shows an equal and enthusiastic use of cosmetics across genders. A common laborer would grind his kohl with the same deliberate care as a queen, applying it for the sun-blocking protection it offered during long hours of outdoor work. For the scribe, the dark lines around his eyes reduced the glare from the bright papyrus, easing the strain of his detailed work. But the reasons went far deeper than mere practicality. For a high priest, the makeup was a vital part of his ceremonial dress, a necessary element to properly commune with the gods. For a soldier, it was a spiritual armor, a bold declaration that he was shielded by the eye of Horus as he marched into battle. The modern idea that makeup is inherently feminine would have been completely foreign to them. In their world, beauty and protection were not gendered concepts. They were fundamental human needs, intertwined with health, faith, and social identity. A man's carefully lined eyes announced his role in society, his piety, and his understanding of the natural world. This universal embrace reveals a culture where personal grooming was a shared language, a common ground that connected every individual to their community and their gods, regardless of whether they were male or female. The brilliance of the Egyptian cosmetic palette was not just in its colors, but in the invisible science of its creation. They achieved a level of sophistication that we are only now beginning to fully appreciate with modern technology. Take the process of grinding galena for kohl. This was not a simple crushing of rock. It was a patient, deliberate act of pulverization that continued for hours, sometimes days, until the mineral particles were reduced to an almost unimaginable fineness. Recent analysis of ancient kohl samples has revealed a startling truth. These artisans were consistently producing pigments where the individual particles measured less than 1 micrometer in size. In our terms, they were creating nanoparticles. This ultra-fine powder was the secret to that flawlessly smooth, clump-free application we see in art. It allowed the paste to glide onto the skin without any gritty texture, adhering evenly to create those sharp, dramatic lines that have defied time. How did they manage such consistent results without a single microscope? It was the product of a perfected technique, passed down through generations, a tangible knowledge of materials that was recorded not in books, but in the skilled hands of the artisans themselves. Then came the challenge of making this delicate powder last all day under the blazing sun. Their solution was in the mixture. By blending these nanoscale pigments with specific fats and oils, they created a stable, waterproof emulsion. The oils, like castor or moringa, formed a protective, water-resistant barrier over the pigment, locking it in place and preventing it from melting away with sweat. Think of it as an ancient, all-natural version of a modern long-wear foundation. They understood that the right oil would not only bind the color, but would also condition the skin beneath, preventing the makeup from cracking or flaking as the day wore on. This was not accidental chemistry. It was the result of centuries of experimentation, a deep, practical understanding of how different substances interact with each other and with the human body. They knew that a certain fat would give a creamier consistency, while a different oil would provide a more matte finish. Every ingredient had a purpose, every mixture a specific function. This reveals a culture that was not merely decorating faces, but was actively engaging in a complex material science, achieving results that still impress us today. The secrets of their cosmetic science were carefully recorded in some of the world's oldest medical texts. The Ebers Papyrus, a massive scroll dating back over 3,500 years, reads like a chemist's formulary for the human body. Within its detailed hieratic script, you will find precise recipes for creating beauty products, written with the same clinical authority as prescriptions for treating wounds or fevers. One entry might instruct you to take 1 part of finely ground galena and mix it with 2 parts of a specific plant oil, stirring it for a set amount of time to achieve the perfect, creamy consistency for Kohl. Another provides a formula for a hair dye, listing exact quantities of ingredients like henna and indigo to be blended into a paste that would cover gray strands. These were not vague suggestions. They were systematic, repeatable formulas, complete with preparation methods that detailed everything from the order of mixing to the ideal storage containers. The papyri even document recipes for skin treatments, such as creams made from milk and honey to soothe irritation, or pastes of aloe and natron to cleanse and heal. This reveals a culture that viewed the creation of cosmetics as a legitimate branch of medicine. The same intellectual rigor used to diagnose an illness was applied to compounding a perfect eyeliner. How did they achieve such consistency batch after batch? The answer lies in the meticulous documentation, a written tradition that transformed personal adornment from folk art into an applied science, ensuring that the sacred power of their makeup could be reliably recreated for generations. The true testament to their cosmetic devotion was sealed away for eternity in the tombs of the pharaohs. When archaeologists first peered into the burial chamber of Tutankhamun, they found more than golden treasures. They discovered a fully stocked vanity for the afterlife. Nestled beside the boy king were multiple ornate Kohl jars, some crafted from exquisite alabaster that gleamed in the torchlight. Each jar still contained the very Kohl paste it was designed to hold, a dry, dark residue after 3,000 years. Beside them lay the delicate application sticks, slender wands of wood and ivory, ready for use. There were also small, polished palettes of siltstone, their surfaces worn smooth from years of grinding minerals into perfect, wearable powders. This was not a ceremonial display, it was a practical kit, a personal necessity for a king's journey into the next world. Why were these items considered so essential for the dead? The Egyptians believed the afterlife was a physical reality, a perfected mirror of the world they knew. To enter that divine realm, you had to arrive prepared, looking your most powerful and protected. A pharaoh could not face the gods without his signature eye makeup, the very symbol of his divine right and his spiritual armor. These tomb findings provide our most direct and intimate connection to their daily lives. We are not just looking at pictures of makeup on a tomb wall. We are holding the actual jars they held, seeing the stains left by their fingers, and understanding that this ritual was so vital. It was the last thing they packed for eternity. Modern science has peered directly into those ancient cosmetic jars, and the findings are rewriting our understanding of Egyptian chemistry. Researchers use tools like mass spectrometry, a technique that acts like a cosmic scale, weighing the tiniest fragments of a substance to identify every single element and molecule within it. They combine this with electron microscopy, which provides an incredibly magnified view, allowing scientists to see the actual shape and size of particles that are invisible to the human eye. When these powerful methods are applied to the dried residues found in 3,000-year-old Kohl pots and alabaster jars, they do more than just confirm the presence of galena or malachite. They reveal a stunning sophistication. The analysis consistently shows that the Egyptians were blending their primary pigments with a whole pharmacy of other substances. They mixed in natural minerals like cerussite and lauryinite, which are white lead-based compounds, not just for color, but to create specific textures and reflective qualities. They added various clays and silicates to adjust the thickness and staying power of the paste. Some residues even contain trace amounts of plant-based gums, likely used as natural binding agents to prevent the precious powder from crumbling. This was not a simple recipe of one mineral and one oil. Each cosmetic jar was a complex, multi-ingredient formulation, carefully balanced to achieve a precise visual effect, a certain feel on the skin, and a guaranteed longevity. How did they know that adding a specific white mineral would make their Kohl apply more smoothly? This level of intentional formulation reveals a culture that was not just using rocks and fat, but was actively engineering their cosmetics with a chemist's precision, achieving results that we are only now beginning to fully decode. The lingering question is not just why they used lead, but how they could have used it for centuries without widespread catastrophe. This puzzle has launched a fierce scientific debate that challenges our modern assumptions about poison. One compelling theory suggests they knew exactly what they were doing, but for a completely different reason. Laboratory studies have shown that when lead salts come into contact with the skin, they can stimulate the production of nitric oxide. This is not a random chemical reaction. It is a key signal that triggers our immune system. In the swampy, insect-ridden environment of the Nile, eye infections would have been a constant, painful threat. The lead in their kohl may have acted as a low-grade, unintentional antibiotic, creating a hostile environment for bacteria at the very site where infections were most likely to occur. This does not make lead safe, but it presents a haunting possibility. The Egyptians may have observed over generations that those who used kohl suffered fewer eye ailments, leading them to believe it was a protective medicine, its toxic side effects appearing slowly and mysteriously over years, completely disconnected from the immediate benefit they could see. Another theory points to their preparation methods. Some researchers propose that by intentionally corroding lead in a controlled way, Egyptian chemists were creating specific lead chloride compounds. This corrosion process might have altered the lead's structure, potentially making it less immediately soluble in the body's fluids and therefore less readily absorbed into the bloodstream. They were not detoxifying it in the way we understand, but they may have been expertly manipulating its form to suit their needs, transforming raw, toxic galena into a more refined and perhaps slightly safer cosmetic product. This was not crude poison application. It was sophisticated materials engineering. Could a cultural preference for immediate survival have simply overridden long-term health? In a world where a simple scratch could lead to a fatal infection, and where blindness from sand and sun was a daily risk, the tangible, short-term protection from infection and glare would have been overwhelmingly valuable. The threat of a slow, accumulating poison decades in the future would have been an invisible phantom, completely overshadowed by the clear and present dangers of their environment. Their choice was a brutal calculation, a trade-off between certain, immediate peril and a vague, distant sickness they would never live long enough to understand. This reframes the entire controversy. We see a dangerous toxin, but they may have seen a life-saving shield, a necessary risk in a world where simply seeing another sunrise was a victory in itself. That deep blue lapis lazuli did not simply appear in an Egyptian queen's cosmetic jar. It arrived on a journey of epic scale, traversing deserts and mountains along routes that connected empires. To understand the full scope of Egyptian cosmetics, you must look beyond the Nile to the vast trade networks that fed their appetite for beauty. From the remote mines of the Badakhshan Mountains in modern Afghanistan, camel caravans carried the precious blue stone thousands of miles. These routes wound through Mesopotamia and the Levant, a slow and perilous transfer of luxury from one trader to the next until the stone finally reached the Egyptian frontier. This was not the only distant treasure they sought. The resins for their perfumes, frankincense and myrrh, were sourced from the arid landscapes of the Horn of Africa and southern Arabia. Their cosmetic oils often came from the Mediterranean world, with olive oil traded from Crete and Cyprus. Even the seemingly local red ochres were sometimes sourced from richer, more vibrant deposits in Nubia to the south. Egypt's genius was its geographic position, a natural bridge between Africa and the Middle East. This placed them at the very center of the ancient world's commercial crossroads. Control over these routes was a primary concern of the state, with pharaohs launching military campaigns specifically to secure access to these valuable materials. The abundance of foreign goods was a direct measure of royal power and diplomatic reach. When a merchant caravan arrived from the east, it was not just carrying spices and stones. It was delivering the very ingredients of divinity, the physical components that allowed a pharaoh to visually embody the heavens and the earth. The desire for a specific shade of green or a particular fragrance literally shaped foreign policy and fueled the economy. How far would you travel for the perfect color? Their cosmetic choices reached across continents, making every painted eye a testament to an empire's vast connections. The almond eye was not a static ideal frozen in time. Its evolution across 3,000 years of Egyptian history reveals a civilization in constant motion, its shifting fashions carved not in stone, but in the very pigments on its people's faces. In the pre-dynastic period, long before the first pyramid cast its shadow, cosmetics were raw and elemental. The earliest Egyptians used the simplest materials they could find. They gathered red and yellow ochre from the riverbanks, smearing the earthy clays onto their skin for ritual and adornment. Their first eye paints were made from a humble green copper ore called malachite and a dull gray lead ore called galena, ground coarsely on simple stone palettes. The look was basic, a far cry from the sharp, dramatic lines we associate with pharaohs. This was a practical beginning, a discovery of how the earth's colors could be used to protect and define the body. With the unification of Egypt and the dawn of the Old Kingdom, a revolution in beauty began. The rise of a powerful central state and a god king pharaoh transformed cosmetics from a personal ritual into a tool of state propaganda. The technology of grinding minerals advanced dramatically. Artisans learned to pulverize galena into a fine, shimmering black powder that could be mixed into a smooth, luxurious paste. This refined Kohl became the signature of the elite, its application more precise and its lines more elongated, creating that iconic, otherworldly gaze seen on statues of kings and nobles. The simple green malachite of earlier times was now carefully sourced from controlled mines in the Sinai, its use denoting a connection to royal power and divine favor. Makeup was no longer just about protection. It was about projecting an image of unchanging, eternal order, a visual language of power that everyone could understand. The Middle Kingdom saw a refinement of this language, with styles becoming slightly more subdued and elegant. The dramatic, heavy lines of the Old Kingdom softened into a more graceful aesthetic. Yet, it was the explosion of empire during the New Kingdom that truly transformed the Egyptian cosmetic palette. As pharaohs like Thutmose III and Ramesses II expanded Egypt's borders, their returning armies and trade delegations brought back a treasure trove of new influences. Exotic resins and perfumes from Punt filled the air at court. The most profound change was the widespread adoption of that ultimate luxury, lapis lazuli. Once a rarity, the deep celestial blue now appeared in the elaborate eye makeup of queens and high-ranking nobles, often layered over a base of gold powder to create a dazzling, metallic effect. New Kingdom makeup was bolder, more complex, and unapologetically opulent, reflecting the wealth and global reach of a superpower. This evolution did not stop at the Nile's banks. The late period and the subsequent Ptolemaic era, which ended with the famous Cleopatra VII, saw Egyptian cosmetics absorbing direct influences from their conquerors and trading partners. Greek and Roman styles began to blend with traditional Egyptian forms. Makeup became even more elaborate, with a heightened emphasis on the entire face, not just the eyes. We see evidence of more complex rouge applications, a greater variety in lip colors, and an increased use of imported oils and unguents. The iconic look, born from the desert and the river, was now a cosmopolitan statement, a fusion of ancient tradition and international fashion. How does a 3,000-year-old beauty standard finally fade? It was not a sudden disappearance, but a slow blending, as the last echoes of the pharaoh's Kohl were gradually absorbed into the vast and changing palette of the classical world. The tools for this sacred art were as deliberate as the formulas themselves. To apply the rich Kohl paste, an Egyptian would use a slender stick, expertly carved from wood, polished ivory, or even precious metal. The tip of this applicator was smooth and rounded, designed to glide through the thick pigment and then along the sensitive lash line without a single scratch. For the vibrant green malachite or the celestial blue lapis powder, they employed fine brushes made from bundled plant fibers or chewed twigs, allowing for the soft, sweeping application that colored the entire lid. And for the red ochre creams and protective oils smoothed onto the skin, they likely used soft cloth pads or simply their own clean fingertips, warming the mixtures to blend them seamlessly. Tomb paintings and reliefs show us this was not a haphazard process. Men and women are depicted sitting calmly before polished bronze mirrors, their own reflections guiding a steady hand. The goal was perfect symmetry, a balanced and harmonious design that framed both eyes identically. This required immense skill and years of practice. A single wobble could ruin the clean, sharp line that defined the sacred eye of Horus shape. It was a daily meditation in precision, a quiet moment of focus where the individual became both the artist and the living canvas. Every stroke was a conscious act, transforming a simple routine into a profound expression of order and beauty. Their cosmetic jars were miniature universes, blending science, faith, and art into a single, sacred practice. This was a culture that refused to see a boundary between a medicinal salve and a divine offering, between a sunblock and a spiritual shield. Every ingredient, from the common red ochre to the celestial lapis lazuli, served a complex web of purposes. It protected the body from the harsh realities of the desert. It announced one's place in the social hierarchy, and it forged a direct, visible connection to the gods. The true sophistication was not just in the rare minerals they used, but in their profound understanding of the human need for identity, protection, and meaning. They engineered their cosmetics with a chemist's precision, grinding minerals into nanoparticles and blending them with specific oils to create long-lasting, waterproof formulations that still impress us today. Their entire philosophy challenges our modern separation of makeup into mere decoration. For them, beauty was not a superficial layer to be applied and removed. It was an essential, integrated part of a holistic life, as vital to one's well-being as food or shelter. So what can our own modern practices learn from this ancient wisdom? Perhaps it is to look beyond the surface of our products, to seek out that same harmony of purpose, where what we put on our skin not only enhances how we look but truly nourishes and protects who we are. The legacy of the Egyptian cosmetic palette is an invitation to see beauty not as a mask, but as a deeper, more meaningful form of self-care, one that has been perfected over thousands of years.